Welcome back to China. What if I told you that a tiny 1-cent coin from 1964 could be hiding in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or even your pocket right now, and most people would spend it without ever realizing what they were holding? The 1964 Lincoln penny $1.9 million dollar may look like an ordinary piece of copper, but this coin comes from one of the most interesting periods in American coinage. And while most 1964 pennies are common, certain examples can become much more interesting to collectors because of their condition, color, special characteristics, and unusual minting errors. So before you throw that old penny into a coin jar or spend it at a store, take a closer look. Welcome back to Hardest Penny, where we search through America's smallest coins to uncover the stories and hidden value that many people completely overlook. 1964 Lincoln Penny. The 1964 Lincoln penny is one of those coins that can easily be underestimated. Millions of these pennies were produced, and because they're still relatively easy to find today, many people assume that every 1964 penny is worth exactly 1 cent. But coin collecting doesn't work that way. $1.9 million. The date on a coin is only the beginning of the story. What really matters is the coin's condition, its color, its strike, its variety, and whether it contains a genuine minting error. The 1964 Lincoln cent features the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. Lincoln's image was originally designed by Victor David Brenner and had appeared on the cent since 1909. On the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. The 1964 penny was made primarily from bronze, with a composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs around 3.11 grams and measures about 19 millimeters across. And there is one detail that you should immediately check when you find a 1964 Lincoln penny. Look underneath the date. You may see a small D mint mark, or you may see nothing at all. A 1964 penny with no mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, while a penny carrying a D was produced at the Denver Mint. Both types are legitimate and were produced in very large quantities. So if your 1964 penny has no mint mark, don't assume that the mint mark has fallen off or that you have automatically discovered a rare error. There is nothing missing. The coin was intentionally produced that way. But now comes the part that can make your search much more interesting. Condition. Imagine two 1964 Lincoln pennies sitting next to each other. One has been in circulation for decades. It is dark, scratched, worn, and has lost much of its original detail. The other looks almost untouched, with sharp lettering, clear details, smooth surfaces, and attractive original color. Both coins have the same date. Both are 1 cent. But collectors may view them very differently. This is why you should never judge an old penny simply by looking at its face value. Copper Lincoln cents are often described by color. You may hear collectors use terms such as brown, or red. A coin that has retained much of its original bright red copper appearance can be especially attractive compared with a heavily toned or circulated example. And when a 1964 Lincoln penny combines excellent condition with strong original color, collectors may become much more interested. However, there is something extremely important to remember. A shiny penny is not automatically a valuable penny. Some people try to clean old coins because they think making them brighter will increase their value. In reality, cleaning can damage the original surface and reduce collector appeal. So if you discover an old 1964 penny that looks dirty, dull, or naturally toned, don't immediately polish it. Don't use chemicals. Don't try to make it look brand new. The original surface of a collectible coin can be much more important than its shine. Now let's talk about another reason why collectors carefully examine 1964 Lincoln cents: mint errors and varieties. During the manufacturing process, mistakes can sometimes happen. A coin might be struck improperly, a planchet could have an unusual shape, or the dies used to strike the coin could develop problems. A genuine mint error can make a common coin much more interesting. But this is also where inexperienced collectors can make costly mistakes. A coin with a strange mark is not automatically an error. A scratch is not an error. A dent is not an error. Damage caused after the coin left the mint is usually just damage. For that reason, if your 1964 penny appears unusual, compare it carefully with known examples before assuming you have something rare. Use a magnifying glass. Check the date. Study Lincoln's portrait. Look at the lettering. Examine the edges. Turn the coin over and inspect the Lincoln Memorial. Look for unusual doubling, off-center striking, clipped areas, abnormal shapes, or other characteristics that appear to be part of the original minting process. And if something truly looks unusual, professional authentication can be extremely important. Another fascinating aspect of the 1964 Lincoln penny is its historical timing. The early 1960s were a period of major change in American coinage. The United States was dealing with a serious coin shortage, and people were increasingly saving coins rather than spending them. Silver coins were becoming particularly difficult for the mint to produce in the quantities needed. This situation eventually led to major changes in American coinage. The 1964 penny, therefore, comes from an important period in the history of United States money. Think about that for a moment. When this little penny was minted, the world looked very different. A postage stamp cost only a few cents. A gallon of gasoline was dramatically cheaper than today. People paid for everyday purchases with physical cash, and a single penny had more practical buying power than it does now. That little copper coin could have traveled through thousands of hands. Maybe it was given as change at a grocery store. Maybe someone dropped it on a sidewalk. Maybe it was placed inside a child's piggy bank. Maybe it stayed hidden in an old family collection for more than half a century. And now, decades later, it could be sitting in your hands. That's what makes coin collecting so exciting. You aren't simply looking at a piece of metal. You're looking at an object that survived a completely different era. Of course, you should keep your expectations realistic. Most ordinary 1964 Lincoln pennies are not rare fortunes. Finding one does not mean you've automatically discovered a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. But that doesn't make the coin uninteresting. The real opportunity comes from knowing what to look for. If you find a 1964 penny in exceptionally high condition, with strong details and beautiful original color, it may deserve a closer examination. If you find a legitimate mint error, that can also change the story. And if the coin appears to be an unusual variety or has characteristics that don't match a normal example, don't spend it until you understand what you have. One of the biggest mistakes new collectors make is assuming that an old coin must be valuable simply because it is old. Age alone doesn't create rarity. Millions of coins can survive from the same year. What matters is scarcity, condition, demand, and authenticity. That's why a careful examination is always better than a quick guess. So the next time you come across a 1964 Lincoln penny, stop for a moment. Don't immediately throw it into a pile of common change. Pick it up. Look at the date. Check the mint mark. Study the surfaces. Examine the color. Look for unusual features. And most importantly, learn before you sell. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary penny and a collectible coin is not something you can see from across the room. It may be hiding in a tiny detail that most people never notice. And that is exactly why the 1964 Lincoln penny deserves a second look. It may not make every collector rich, but it represents a fascinating chapter in American history and a perfect reminder that valuable discoveries don't always come in large packages. Sometimes they are small enough to fit between your fingers. So if you have a 1964 Lincoln penny at home, take it out and examine it carefully. You might discover that it is simply a common old cent, and that's okay. Or you might find a coin with exceptional condition, attractive color, or a genuine minting characteristic that makes it far more interesting than you expected. Either way, you have discovered something important. The value of a coin begins with knowing what you're looking at. This is Hardest Penny, where we turn ordinary coins into extraordinary discoveries. So before you spend your next old penny, look twice, check the date, and remember, sometimes the smallest coins can tell the biggest stories. And who knows? The next 1964 Lincoln penny you find might be the one that makes you stop and say, wait a minute, what is this coin really worth? If you want, I can also make the 1964 Lincoln penny title, thumbnail text, description, and SEO tags in the same viral style for your hardest penny channel. Imagine finding a tiny 1965 Lincoln penny in your pocket, a coin that most people would probably ignore without a second thought. You toss it into a jar, leave it in an old drawer, or spend it without ever looking closely. But what if I told you that some 1965 Lincoln pennies can be far more interesting than their 1 cent face value suggests? What if the difference between an ordinary penny and a valuable collectible could be hidden in the coin's condition, strike, errors, or the special way it was produced? Welcome back to Hardest Penny, where we take ordinary-looking coins and uncover the stories, mysteries, and potential value hiding inside them. Today, we are putting the spotlight on one specific coin, the 1965 Lincoln Memorial Cent. 1965 Lincoln Penny. The 1965 Lincoln Penny is one of those coins that can easily be overlooked because millions were produced and the coin itself does not immediately look rare. But 1965 was an important period in American coinage. The Lincoln cent continued to be made from a bronze composition in 1965, generally consisting of 95% copper and 5% zinc. The coin weighs about 3.11 grams and has a diameter of approximately 19 millimeters. On the front, you see the famous portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. On the reverse is the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. But there is something especially interesting about the date 1965. If you look at a normal 1965 Lincoln cent, you will notice that there is no mint mark beneath the date. That does not automatically mean the coin is missing a mint mark because of an error. In fact, the absence of a mint mark was intentional during this period. The United States Mint temporarily stopped using mint marks on circulating coins beginning in the mid-1960s as part of an effort to discourage coin hoarding and make it harder for people to identify coins from particular production facilities. That means a 1965 penny without a mint mark can be completely normal. And this is where many people make a mistake. They see a 1965 penny without a mint mark, assume something is missing, and immediately think they have discovered a rare error coin. However, that does not mean every 1965 penny is worthless. If you find a 1965 Lincoln penny that has been circulating for decades, you will usually see scratches, discoloration, worn details, and damage around the edges. Such coins are generally common. But if you discover a coin that has survived in exceptionally sharp condition, with strong details, attractive original color, and very little contact damage, collectors may find it much more interesting. This is particularly true when we move into the highest grades. A brilliant red 1965 Lincoln cent with exceptional preservation can be considerably more desirable than a heavily circulated brown example. Collectors often pay close attention to the color designation of copper-based Lincoln cents. Coins can generally be described as brown, red-brown, or red, depending on how much of their original color remains. So when searching your old coins, don't just ask, is this a 1965 penny? Ask a much better question. How well has this particular 1965 penny survived? Now let's talk about another fascinating part of the 1965 story, special mint sets. During the mid-1960s, the United States Mint produced special mint sets, often called SMS coins. These were not ordinary circulation strikes and were not exactly the same as traditional proof coins. They were specially prepared coins intended for collectors. Some 1965 Lincoln cents were included in these special mint sets. And this creates another reason why two coins carrying exactly the same date can look noticeably different. But there is another warning you need to remember. Not every shiny 1965 penny is valuable. A coin can be polished, cleaned, chemically treated, or otherwise altered to make it look brighter. Unfortunately, cleaning a collectible coin can actually reduce its desirability. Collectors generally prefer coins that have their original surfaces rather than coins that have been aggressively polished. So if you discover a 1965 Lincoln penny that looks unusually bright, don't immediately grab a cloth and start rubbing it. Leave it alone. Examine it carefully. Use good lighting. And if you think you found something unusual, consider having the coin examined by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Now, let's talk about errors. This is where the 1965 Lincoln penny becomes even more exciting. A genuine mint error can sometimes make an otherwise common coin significantly more interesting to collectors. Errors can occur when something goes wrong during the minting process. Depending on the type and severity of the error, a coin may show unusual doubling, an off-center strike, a clipped planchet, die damage, or other characteristics. You have to investigate. Look at the date. Look at Lincoln's portrait. Examine the lettering. Check the edges. Look closely at the reverse. Compare the coin with photographs of known examples. And most importantly, don't let excitement replace verification. Another fascinating thing about the 1965 Lincoln cent is its historical importance. This coin was produced during a period when Americans were experiencing major changes in everyday money. The United States was facing a coin shortage. People were saving coins instead of spending them, and the mint was working under enormous pressure to increase production. So even if your 1965 penny turns out to be worth only a small amount above face value, or simply 1 cent, it is still a genuine piece of American history. Maybe it was carried in someone's pocket in 1965. Maybe it was used at a grocery store. Maybe it sat in a cash register. Maybe a child received it as change. Maybe it spent decades inside an old jar before finally being discovered. That is one of the reasons coin collecting is so fascinating. You are not just collecting metal. You are collecting history. And when it comes to the 1965 Lincoln penny, the key is understanding what makes one example different from another. A heavily worn 1965 cent is usually not something that will make you rich. A common example should not be advertised as a rare coin simply because it has no mint mark. But an exceptionally preserved coin, a desirable special mint set example, or a properly authenticated mint error can attract much more attention. And that is the lesson I want you to remember before you spend your next old penny. Never judge a coin only by its face value. A penny may look ordinary on the outside while holding a fascinating story underneath. So, if you have a 1965 Lincoln penny sitting in your collection, don't throw it away just because someone tells you it is only a penny. Take a closer look. Check its condition. Look for unusual characteristics. Compare it with authenticated examples. And if something truly looks different, get a professional opinion before making any decision. And remember, the most valuable part of coin collecting isn't always the price tag. Sometimes it is the discovery. The moment you pull an old penny from a box, turn it over, see the date 1965, and realize that you may have been holding a piece of American history without even knowing it. This is Hardest Penny, and if you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind old coins, make sure you stay with us. Because the next ordinary-looking penny you find could be the one that makes you stop, look twice, and ask the question every collector loves to ask. What exactly am I holding? And that question is where the real treasure hunt begins. If you want, I can also make the next Hardest Penny script more dramatic and viral style, with stronger suspense, retention hooks, and a powerful ending for YouTube.